Today, we're going to be working inside of Luminar Neo in order to create a color pop effect. I'm going to show you two distinct ways of doing this particular effect inside of the software, and I will say one is better than the other, so we'll talk about that. Now, of course, if at any time you find this video helpful, don't forget to smash that like button, and if you're new here, consider subscribing. If you want to save some money when picking up Luminar Neo, consider using the link and the coupon code down in the description box below. It'll save you some money when you check out. I do make a commission from everyone who uses it, but it's at no extra cost to you. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into Luminar Neo. Here we are inside of Luminar Neo with our image. Now you may be wondering, Chris, what the heck is a color pop technique? And the shortest way to explain it is you remove the color from the image except for one area. This is a really cool photographic technique in order to draw the viewer's eye to the thing that you want them to pay attention to the most in the frame. All right, and so to do that, it's pretty straightforward inside of Luminar Neo. Now, at the beginning of the video, I did mention I'm going to show you two different methods of doing this. And the first method is a way of doing it, but it's not the way that I would recommend doing it. And I'll explain why. So to get started with the first method, what you'll do is come over to your edit window if you're not already in edit, and then you'll come over to essentials and come down to black and white. When you click on this, it doesn't do anything to the photo. You actually have to click on convert to black and white. And so you can see we've done the first step, which is remove the color from the entire image, but it's literally remove the color from everywhere in the image. And we want to keep the color on this train right here. And so we have to use a little bit of masking in order to achieve that. To do that, what we're going to do is come over to our black and white adjustment and then click on the masking section. This brings up our tools that we can use to mask, and you could use whatever tools you feel the most comfortable with, but my recommendation is try to use the object selection tool because this is going to help you get that look a little bit faster and make the selection process a little bit easier. So I'll go ahead and click there. It will analyze our image, and then it brings up the image without any of the effect applied. And so this could be a little confusing. The thing that you have to remember is you want to remove the black and white filter from the train in the middle that has all the color. And so what I'm going to do is click on subtract. This gives us a different overlay. And what this is really telling me is everywhere that I see red, the black and white filter will be applied. And so remember, I want to remove the black and white filter from the train. So I already have subtract selected. If I hover over the image, you'll notice I get this little minus icon. And what that's telling me is if I click here, it's going to remove all of this area that is kind of lightish red or has a very faint red overlay on it. If I click there, you'll notice that I now have recovered the detail or the color information in the train. It's no longer a part of this red overlay. Now, I will note, you can see in the upper portion of the photo, it kind of selected a portion that I didn't want to select. And instead of trying to fix that here inside of the object selection tool, I'll show you how to clean that up later on. And so we'll come over to the back side of the train, click there, and we have now fully recovered the train. And so it will show with all of its color where everything else will be black and white. And so what I'm going to do is come back to our masking tools. I'm going to click the back arrow, and you'll notice that we now have the color pop effect. And this, in a nutshell, is exactly what you would do. Now, I think we can go a little bit further, and remember, this is not the optimal way of creating a color pop effect. This is just one of the ways that I was able to come up with inside of Luminar Neo. Now, with that being said, we need to clean up this little area that's over here. And so with the masking tools still selected inside of the black and white filter, I'm going to come over here to mask actions, click the drop down, and then click on show. This is going to give us that overlay again, and we can see that gap. Now, what I need to do is reapply the black and white filter into that gap. And so I'm going to come up here to brush because this is just the easiest way of fixing it. And it also allows you to paint and correct a mask after you've used one of the AI tools. And so with brush selected, I'm going to click on paint because I want to paint in the effect in that area. And then it doesn't matter the size of the brush really. We'll take a look at that here in a second, but you definitely want your strength to be at 100%. The softness isn't all that important either because you could just paint this over as many times as you need to. But with that being said, I'm just going to come over here, click, drag, paint this in. I've now corrected that. So if you're familiar with masking, that's probably a no-brainer for you. You knew exactly what was going to happen. But if you're not, well, now you know how to clean up a mask if that does happen to you when using the object selection tool. Now, I'm going to go ahead and hit the brush icon here to go back to my mask settings. And then I'm going to come down to more actions and I'm going to turn off this mask overlay. And then what I'm going to do just for the sake of time is I'm going to hit the copy button and I'm going to use that in the second method. So that way I don't have to recreate this mask. So if I hit copy, I now have that on my clipboard. We're good to go. I'm going to come over here to adjustments. So you remember I mentioned that this isn't the best way of doing the color pop technique. Well, the reason for that is in order to reintroduce color into the image, you have to work with the saturation channels. And this could be done. I'm not saying it's impossible. You could just move all of these up, but you have to work channel by channel. And this gets extremely, extremely tedious. Now, why would you not want to work with the image being completely black and white? Well, maybe you just wanted to mute the colors around the main subject here. And so that's the reason why I think that this technique just doesn't lend itself the best. Now, it does give you a lot of control over how the luminance values in each of those color channels are going to be displayed. Case in point, if I wanted to brighten up the reds in the image, I could do that. If I wanted to darken the yellows that are in the affected black and white areas, I could do that. And, you could kind of play through with that. So it is a viable option. It's just not the best option. Now, let me show you my recommended way of doing this because I think that this is going to give you the most credibility or flexibility, I should say, in order to edit your images. And so I'm just going to go ahead and hit the backspace there or the back arrow, delete that. We get a fully colored image right now. And let me just come over to edits, make sure that that's completely gone. And so we don't have any overlap with those techniques, right? And so the way that I would recommend doing this is to use the develop filter. And this is like a staple filter inside of Luminar Neo. Now, if your develop filter is not in the favorite section, that's fine. You'll come down to essentials and it should be the very first one. But because I use it so frequently, I just leave it up here in the develop section. And so with this tool, I'm going to go ahead and apply that mask. So remember earlier I copied it. Well, if I click on masking and then I come down to more actions and it looks like I lost that mask. So let's go ahead and recreate it. We'll click on object select, hit subtract, and then I'm going to click on the train here again, go back to the object select, grab the brush, and I know that it's in this general area. And so what I'll do is just make my brush a little bit larger, paint this in so that way I recover that area just like we did when we were using the black and white adjustment. Now, you're probably wondering, well, Chris, what makes this so different from the black and white adjustment? Well, the difference here, if I come over to color and I just pull out the saturation, I get essentially the same look that I got with the black and white filter. The difference here is if I wanted to increase or reintroduce the color or just mute all of the other colors, I get more control over being able to do that. So maybe I do something like this, where I have the saturation added at a -47. The numbers aren't really as important as long as it looks good for the image. And so this helps with a more realistic and a natural looking color pop when you're working inside of the software. But not only that, I have access to light tools that I don't have access to inside of the black and white filter. And the way that Luminar Neo works, the more tools you have access to inside of a single filter, I find it works the best. And so this is the reason why I recommend using this tool and this method if you're going to do the color pop option or technique, because you can work with contrast. So let's say I wanted to contrast those black and white areas, and I want to darken down all of those areas uniformly. I can do it like so. And if I come back over here to the color section, again, I can just pull out all of the color if I felt like the train is in competition with the rest of the image. And then I now have this overall look. That's the reason why I would recommend using the develop module to set the stage, so to speak, for your overall effect. And now, once that's done, I would recommend adding in an additional develop module, or you can use the color module. And so for this, we'll use the color module, but I do recommend adding in fact, we're going to go with the develop, and I'll show you why. So we'll add in a develop module. We'll come over to masking, object select, and this time I want to create a selection of just the train with the color. And so I'm going to click here and click here to select the entire train, and then we'll come back and we'll select adjustments. And this time I'm going to click on smart contrast, and I'm going to increase it. And so what this is doing for me is just making those colors a little bit more contrasty, equivalent to the contrast that I applied over the rest of the image. But what I can also do is I can add in a little bit more saturation. I can also darken down the exposure for just the train there, and maybe pull back on the highlights just a little bit. And if I needed to, I can even come in and start working on the white and the black point of the color on just that train. And so having it set up this way, where you build the foundation of the color pop using develop, and then adding in an additional develop over the train, gives you more flexibility, in my opinion, in order to get the look that you really want to be able to get. And so there you have a color pop effect. If I hold down the backslash key, this is the before and this is the after with using Luminar Neo. Now, again, if I say, hey, you know what? I really wanted everything to be black and white. There's a little bit of color up here and in the train tracks and stuff like that. I can come back over here to edits, and then I can come to the very first develop module, because so far we've only applied 2. And then I can come back to the color section, and I can just remove all of that saturation and then close that down. And now I have the complete black and white. So you just get so much more flexibility, and it's a little bit more simple and streamlined. So hopefully you found some value in today's content. If you did, smash the like button. If you're new here, consider subscribing so you can learn more about using Luminar Neo and techniques like color pop and other things like that. Now, of course, if you want to learn how to use the software just a little bit faster to get your creative vision out and into the world, well, consider signing up for a one-on-one training call with me. I will help you solve problems and develop a workflow that's specific for your needs. So if you have a project, or if you're stuck in a certain area inside of Luminar Neo, well, I will help you figure out how to get by that. Now, I can't promise that I'm going to help everyone solve every single problem that they've ever had with the software, because the bottom line is software has limitations. But I will do my best to help you learn how to overcome, or at least get around, the limitations of the software. So if that's something you're interested in, check the link in the description box below, and I'd be happy to meet with you one-on-one. With all that said, until next time, I want you to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.